Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Lisa Mitrakin and today I will show you how to color a beautiful dark opal like this one with colored pencils. Let's get to it. As I'm starting to color this gemstone with my first color, which is Copenhagen Blue in the Prismacolor set, let's talk a little bit about opals and also where the idea for this video came from. Many of you may know opals as moonstones or iridescent white stones. They're very magical and mysterious and glistening, but they also come in other colors. There are rainbow opals and dark blue opals and even pink ones, which I will demonstrate in a separate video. What they all have in common though is that patchy internal pattern as well as iridescence. Now, the idea for this video came from a direct request from one of my students over at It's Easy to Draw Art Academy. There I have an entire giant 4-week course called The Complete Guide to Coloring Gemstones, where we actually start with opals and proceed to every imaginable type of gemstone, cut and uncut, and of course, ending up with the grand finale of diamonds. But for opals in the course, I teach the classic standard white iridescent opals, specifically focusing on iridescence. Well, one of my students said I would like to color a really dark blue one, so I am making this video just for her, and I invite the rest of you to color along. Notice what I'm doing with this first layer of blue. Very specifically, pay attention to how my hand moves around the page, and I'm immediately applying this pigment not in my traditional smooth shading technique, but rather in little blotches, in little patches, specifically changing the directions of my stroke to immediately establish that internal structure that is specific to opals. There's no other stone out there that behaves like this. So our very first step is to establish this, I'm tempted to say texture, but it's actually not. This is a polished cabochon, so this is not the texture of it, but rather the internal structure. My next color on this is cloud blue, and what we're looking for here is a light blender pencil. Immediately notice magic that's happening on the page. All of a sudden, we're creating a whole new color. Now, many of you, all of you, in fact, if you have a pencil set at all, you have a color that will match what we're creating on the screen right now. And it's probably some kind of a mid-tone blue, like a non-photo blue, for instance. But we don't want to start with that one perfect matching color. What we want to do here is actually to apply the first layer of our splotchy, blotchy internal texture of the opal with a very dark blue. And then we need to come in with an obscenely light, this cloud blue in the Prismacolor set to create this blending effect. And it's in this blending that the opal illusion is born. Additionally, we're smoothing out every single layer of our colored pencil work, making it appear more and more flawless and more gemstone-like, cabochon-like with every single layer. For this technique to work, it's important that you're coloring with pencils that can layer lighter over darker, which most oil-based pencils can. I work at this point 100% with Prismacolor pencils because to me that is the single most professional brand, and I've also gotten so used to this brand that I know every single pencil without having to read its name. Continuing with our smoothing and blending, I am now coming in with a Prismacolor white to add my highlights. Notice that even though I'm coloring on toned paper, I did not start with my signature white charcoal. This is light brown cardstock paper. It's very common and it's one of my favorites to color on. And naturally, normally, I would prime my subject with white charcoal when working on toned paper, and especially when working with opals. So why not here? Well, because this opal will ultimately be so dark, we don't need to invest in a light undertone. If you do love working with your white charcoal, you may start by adding that white highlight on the left with your white charcoal instead of coming in with a white pencil right now. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I always tell you that in every single coloring tutorial. And now I'm looking for a blue that's even darker and deeper, perhaps even a violet. From my Prismacolor set, I picked a violet blue, and now that everything is smoothed out and I have a very cool base for my opal, I can come in and start doing a little bit of the minute work, adding the details of those patches, and also making my stone darker with every level. I tend to go back and forth on gemstones, light, dark, light, dark. I add more detail and darkness with a dark pencil, and then I come in with a lighter pencil to smooth everything out. Especially for cabochons, this is a really great idea. As far as this coloring page, we didn't even talk about that. This coloring page I made especially for this demo. This is a practice page. I thought I would make it into a fun and decorative brooch set for us to practice cabochons on. And it's up in the collector's vault for everyone who's a member. So don't forget to swing by and grab your copy. The collector's vault is a subscription in It's Easy to Draw Art Academy. And as a member, you get a weekly brand new coloring page, often related to a topic that I'm teaching, but sometimes just seasonal or mood related or whatever you guys are asking for. The cool thing about the Collector's Vault is that you guys can make specific requests and I will make that coloring page for you. So if you want to practice on this particular page, make sure to swing by the vault and grab your copy. The cool thing about practicing these cabochons, though, is that you don't even need a fancy page like this to practice it. Simply draw a circle on your page, and there you have it. There's a cabochon. Dark light, dark light. Like I said, now we're coming in with another lighter blue. And I've mentioned this color previously. This is our non-photo blue. It's a mid-tone blue in the Prismacolor set. And I'm using this pencil as a blender now. Much like we used cloud blue as a blender in the beginning. And in fact, the effect that's happening right now, the effect that we're achieving with this pencil, is very similar to that first blending layer. With some gemstones, you can get away with fewer layer of colors, but with opals specifically, it's essential that we do layer, layer, layer with as many colors as you can throw at this gemstone, because we need to create the illusion of depth, iridescence, and that patchy opal-specific internal texture. But now it's time for us to start the actual iridescent effect. Now that we have all the blues established exactly where we need them, we can come in with a light green or a mint green. I selected a color called True Green in my Prismacolor set, and I can freely color over certain areas that are already pretty light on my cabochon. This is the part that's very tricky to teach and replicate. Looking at the final result, we can see that there's so many different colors in this opal, all overlapping in this kind of a camouflage pattern. So how do you decide what to add first and what to add second and third and fifth and 100s? Like, how do you separate all these colors? This is how. At first, you establish your complete blue base if your main color is blue, leaving some of these patches light, but not uncolored. These areas that I'm coloring now with green and pink, pink is another color that shows up in iridescence. All of these funky little pigments I am adding over areas that appear uncolored, but in fact are colored with our light pencils. If you're working on white paper, it's especially important. It's very easy to leave certain areas of the paper uncolored for these iridescent blotches, but we don't want to do that with opals. We want our surface to be as smooth as possible while revealing the texture within the cabochon. So everything at this point needs to be covered with some kind of pigment. If you need to add white pigment over your white paper, go for it. But these iridescent colors, the green and the pink, we need to be adding over a layer of actual colored pencil pigment. And now for a touch of vibrance. This is going to be colorist specific. Maybe you don't want your little inclusions to be as bright as mine. I always recommend looking at reference photography before jumping into something as complicated as gemstones and specifically opals. So your reference image may have a little bit of this fuchsia color in it, or maybe it doesn't. Some blue opals don't have any pink and fuchsia inclusions in them at all. They're just pure blue, and the only iridescent color that you see on them is green. But the student that requested this lesson sent me reference photos of opals that actually have this fuchsia inclusion, so there it is. But notice that adding fuchsia is not the only purpose that this pencil is serving. It's also affecting my deep dark blue areas, isn't it? Making them more purple and darker. If you want to exaggerate your iridescence effect even further, come in with something neon or chartreuse. I chose a yellow chartreuse for my Prismacolor set, and I'm going over the areas that are light green with that pencil to create a little bit more of an iridescent effect. And once again, that's a super personal choice. You don't need to have neon pencils for this to work. You don't need to have a chartreuse pencil for this to work. You can simply add a little bit of lemon yellow if you already have green established. Heck, even if you don't have green established, adding lemon yellow over your light blue pools of color will also create an iridescent green. There's so many ways of achieving all of these effects. If you are interested in gemstones, gemstone effects, do consider the full course, the complete guide to coloring gemstones. I think it has something like 80 lessons, and we literally cover every type of gemstone that exists, but obviously not every single imaginable specimen. But as you can see, if you have a specific request as a student, I will absolutely honor that request and make a separate tutorial on the gemstone of your choice. Depending on how dark you want your blue opal to be, you may want to come in with even more dark blues. I thought that a little bit of ultramarine blue will be just the bee's knees. This is my absolute favorite color in the world, ultramarine blue, also known as French ultramarine. So I'm coming in with my favorite color just to add a little bit more definition and a little bit more variation. But again, this is an opal. No two opals are the same or even very much alike. They are like unique and special snowflakes. Every opal is its own creature, which is why we have so much leeway here. When you do work from a reference photo, don't sweat the details too much. Try to take in the bigger picture, really take in the essence of the stone and decide for yourself how light or dark you want it to be. I highly recommend that if you're feeling brave, you finish this coloring with a touch of black. Every time we add black to create a darker shade of a particular pigment, the rule of thumb is that we add it to the darkest areas of the composition. So in my case, I'm adding just a touch of black with the lightest hand imaginable, only to the areas that are the deepest, darkest blue. And that takes my blue just a notch closer to that darkness. This tutorial was to show you how to color a dark blue opal, but I went ahead and completed the entire brooch with some kind of a tarnished yellow metal and diamonds, or perhaps crystals, maybe even white aquamarine. Again, if you want to grab this exact page, you can get it at the Collector's Vault along with a ton of other coloring pages. Simply follow the link on the screen or the clickable link in the video description. This page will also be a gift for all of my patrons, and the entire coloring of this brooch and the one to come with the pink opal will be available to my patrons of the Palette Pro tier, formerly known as the Coloring Club, in the month of February. So if you want to see the full uninterrupted recording of both this and the brooch on the right to come, do consider joining that Patreon tier. In my next short and sweet tutorial, I will show you how to color a light pink opal, so stay tuned for that in the weeks to come. That will happen in February, very fitting, just around Valentine's Day. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, the person who requested this. I hope this answers your questions, and I can't wait to see your new colorings with deep blue opals. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, join the Academy, and I'll see you in class.